Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
It is the Brad and John Show. You can check out our website at bjshow.co. Every day we put up the show on podcast. It's on, we use Red Circle, but you can just go right to the website, bjshow.co. Typically I'd get it up within about half an hour, 45 minutes after the show's over. So probably by 9 o'clock this morning, the show should be up on the website. And you can listen, and I put it in 3 segments. So you can listen to the first segment, second segment, third segment. And on the website, I try to put a little handicap, not a handicap, a caption, a little synopsis of what's in that particular segment. Okay, earnings tax. You said that Phil Cristofanelli, who's a state rep, and isn't he terming out? Isn't he running for state senator next year?
He's running
or this
for
year?
The seat that's being vacated by Senator Bill Eigel, who, as we know, is running for governor.
Right.
Phil has a 3-way primary. He's running against another state representative, a guy named Adam Schnelting, who represents St. Charles, and then Rich Krismer, who was formerly the St. Charles County Elections Director.
Yes.
So as of now, it's a 3-way Republican primary for Bill Eigel's seat.
Wasn't Rich Krismer, wasn't he a state rep at some point in time?
He was. Rich represented the St. Charles area from I want to say the early 90s to the mid to late 90s. And then his son is a former spokesman for U.S. Senator Jim Talent, Governor Matt Blunt. His son is a really sharp Republican political consultant, specifically for communications, and if you're running for the U.S. Senate in Missouri, you're going to hire Rich Krismer to be your spokesman.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think Rich Krismer's got to be up there in years because, and I'll tell you why. Years ago, one of my kids, and I can't remember which one it is, came home from school with some information. Essentially, it was like one of these little booklets about state government, and apparently Rich Krismer came to their class and gave them these books.
Yeah,
so,
it was probably I guarantee you it was a district directory that are quite popular because, first of all, they're paid for by taxpayers, and they're essentially a campaign piece that every representative can give to every constituent or school group.
Maybe that's what it was. Okay. Earnings tax. Was that the number 3 story or the number 2 story?
It was, yeah, number 3.
Okay. I know this story real well because a guy by the name of Jack Klobnak, Klobnak, Klobnak. I know Jack from way back. Jack lived in Carrollton. Do you know where Carrollton is?
Yeah, Carrollton's on the western part of the state. They're home of radio station KMZU, which I'm sure you know, Brad.
No, different. This was a subdivision in Bridgeton, okay?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm thinking of Carrollton, Missouri.
Carrollton was a subdivision because of the fact that the streets are all there, but the houses are gone, okay? This is on the west side of 270. If you're going, let's say you're up in North County and you're driving along 270 and you're coming down from Mo Bottoms Road, okay? Carrollton is on the right side there. If you look down, there's sort of like a little hill or something like almost like a valley. You come, there's a hill and there's a valley, and I believe parts of the community center, which had a swimming pool and stuff like that, is still there. Okay.
Okay.
Jack Klobnak lived in Carrollton. And when it was announced that they're going to put in the new runway out at Lambert, which at the time it was called W1W, now it's officially known as 1129, they announced that they're going to take all this property in Bridgeton, and specifically, they're going to take the entire subdivision of Carrollton. Now, Carrollton
sounds reasonable for government to come in and say it's their property. Go on.
Carrollton was not a large subdivision. Okay, I made a huge mistake. Carrollton was a large subdivision. I don't want to say was not. Was a very large subdivision. And if I'm not mistaken, and I got to go back, there's a couple different things out there on the internet. There's one of them, a guy recently within the last 5 years, he doesn't even live here in the St. Louis area, but he drives around the country and he does these fascinating videos of cities that no longer exist. And in this case, he did a video on a subdivision that no longer exists. And he drove through the Carrollton subdivision. And it's really sad because the streets are all still there, but the houses are all gone. And he gives this long explanation. I believe Carrollton was developed by Fisher and Frichtel, or however they pronounce their name,
yeah,
which is still a developer in the St. Louis area. Okay, so when this was announced, Jack Klobnak, who at the time ran an advertising agency, and what's interesting was a couple of the other guys in the Carrollton subdivision were all high-level people in either advertising agencies, either Darcy or the PR firm of Fleischman Hillard. So all these guys got together with a bunch of citizens and formed BAD, the Bridgeton Air Defense, okay? And one of the things they fought Vince Shamel on this, and they went to town halls and stuff like that. But the most interesting part of this is, once again, another guy who lived in Carrollton was an attorney. And he started doing all this research, and he found this interesting little thing within the laws of the city of St. Louis, the 1% earnings tax. If you work for a company, and here's the example, and what they found, a bunch of people that worked in Anheuser-Busch and companies downtown, and these people were executives. If you worked for Anheuser-Busch, and let's say you had a week where you were on the road, you were traveling, you never went to the headquarters for an entire week, you did not own the earnings tax for that week. So
and by the way, not to interrupt, but there was a brief mention of there are some exemptions of this that are part of statute. But go ahead.
Okay, in other words, if you can document that you were out of town, and what's interesting was you get some of these high-profile executives for some of these big companies, they're on the road 50 weeks out of the year, not the entire week, but they may be on the road, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they're here, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the next week. So however many days you are missing, you take a percentage of that tax and you don't owe it. So in other words, just super easy raw numbers. If you could document the fact that you were out of town and not at the Anheuser-Busch headquarters, or back in the day the A.G. Edwards headquarters, or any of those kind of things, or even Fleischman Hiller or Darcy, if you could document that you were out of the city of St. Louis for 50% of the year, you only owed 50% of the earnings tax.
That's nice. That's a good chunk of change for a lot of people, right?
Yes, and what there was a look-back provision in the law, and I believe I think they took this out finally, that you could claim 5 years of previous years. So in other words, if you went back through your travel records and said, "No, hold on a minute, I paid my 1% earnings tax to the city of St. Louis, and I was out of the city 60% of the time in whatever year it was," you could go back and you could file a refund request from the city, and they had to grant it.
No wonder Vince Shamel hated these guys.
Well, so these guys were all advertising guys. They bought ads on radio, on television, and in the Post-Dispatch, essentially saying, "Hey, it was almost like akin to some of these attorney ads, like, hey, you might be eligible.
Yeah. If you feel like you're entitled to compensation from St. Louis City for unjust taxation,
you might be able to get money back from the city of St. Louis, and we're going to tell you how you're going to save money going forward. So the city went ballistic. Now, fast forward, the reason this came back into focus again is with the COVID thing. All the people that work downtown, all of a sudden, they were told not to show up to work from home, and a good bunch of them don't live in the city of St. Louis.
That's right, and they don't have to risk, thanks to COVID, they don't have to risk life and limb traveling into St. Louis City.
Well, but they fought it, and I think they lost because they said that special circumstances or some crazy thing like that.
Well, so this is an important fix from Phil Cristofanelli.
You know what? I know his mom, and I used to have his phone number as well, too. I just texted her. The reason I know her, she's very, 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 at least she used to be, very, very, very prominent in St. Charles County, in the St. Charles County what do you call it? Republican committee, the Republican Central Committee, and she was on the board. And the reason I know that, one time we made a presentation to the board for them to buy advertising on our station, and she was on the board. Actually, it was very nice. She actually got us into the meeting because of the fact she called me up and she says, "Hey, they got these guys from Odyssey who are showing up, and these guys from Hubbard. I think you should be there as well too." And the thing that bothered me was the lady. I'll say this right now: the lady from Odyssey didn't want to actually come to the meeting. So she wanted to dial in, or did she just want to send a PowerPoint presentation? They put her on speakerphone, and I'm going like, well, that's pretty arrogant. Why did she not want to be around so many white Republicans or something? What's the problem? This was during the COVID thing. Okay, so she didn't want to be around. She didn't want to be in the same room with other people. Oh, of course, that could be a super spreader, especially with you there, Brad. Yes, with me there, she was doomed. So I texted Cindy, is her name, and I said, I need to talk to your son. I would have called him, but I can't find his number in my phone anymore. I had it at one point in time because I talked to him about something else on the air. I don't know what happened to it. Certain things got purged out of my phone. Okay. And I have to do something right now, and this is sort of crazy. We're going to try something, and I'm gonna take a risk here, and I'm going to. Is this another on-air experiment, Brad? Yes, listeners love this. This is great. This is experience in real time. Can Brad get the telephone system to work? That's what this is. It's an ongoing bit, right? I've worked on this for weeks. I use the same phone system in the other studio in Westplex 107.1, and it works flawlessly. I put the same system in this studio, and it doesn't work with a crap. So let me see. Let me try this. Hold on a minute. I don't know if he's going to be on the road, and I have to figure out how to do all this stuff. Hold on a minute. Let me do this. Hold on. Let me see if this is going to work. Hold on.
Please leave your message for
Drew. Okay, I got a weird feedback. Hold on a minute. Okay, Drew. Hey, do you hear me? Drew, this is your father. I'm just trying something. Quick, never mind. Talk to you later. Bye. That sounded like crap, doesn't it? Well, it's straight out of Crapville. Yeah. I don't know if that's going to work. Okay. Okay, two things I want to touch on, and then we're going to follow up with the stove thing, okay? Over the weekend, I heard an interesting term that I thought to myself, I'm that guy. And the term was a hot stove toucher. Have you ever heard that? Oh, yeah. Have you ever heard that before? A hot stove toucher as a kid? Well, that's a compliment, isn't it, Brad? If somebody called me a hot stove toucher, I would take it as a compliment. But you and I are kind of, that's the way cut from a different cloth. That's the way I took it. I took it as a compliment. That is the hot stove toucher. So I'm going like, okay, I'm a hot stove toucher. Okay, secondly, there is a comedy routine that's on Netflix or something like that, which I thought was sort of interesting, by Trevor Noah. You know who Trevor Noah is? Yeah, he is a left-wing comedian, I guess you could call him. Yes. And I guess he's black, or, I don't know exactly where he's from. He's either fully black or half black. Well, right? Isn't he from, like, South Africa or something like that? I don't know. You're right. I think he's not native born. I think you're right about that. We can look at it. I'll look it up while you tell the story. Here's what's interesting, and I found this fascinating. His bit, a part of his routine, talked about the fact that he went to Germany, and what he found interesting in Germany is that all around Germany there are things that essentially commemorate things that happened in World War II and previous to World War II. And he said the tour guide is quick to point out that Hitler and all these things, all these terrible things that Germany was responsible for, are taught in the schools, and they're openly displayed. There are monuments and things like that are openly displayed all over Germany that show the history of Germany, essentially show the bad part of the history of Germany. And the idea being is they teach this, and they have these monuments that are all over Germany to show people that how big a mistake they made and to never, ever, ever do that again. And I'm thinking to myself, I've heard that, from
folks that I used to work with who were in Germany.
Right.
I remember hearing the outlines of these type of stories.
Right. The idea being is that if you put this stuff out there and you go, oh my God, that was terrible, we don't ever want to do that again. But what happens in the United States? We take down General Robert E. Lee's statue, and then secretly
anything that mentions the Confederacy,
right.
anything about a man that might have one day owned a slave.
Exactly.
We have to knock it down, and we have to make a big ceremony about it.
And we have to cleanse ourselves of that. We can't have the Civil War Memorial in Forest Park. We can't have the Christopher Columbus Memorial and it's interesting in this routine he does. He talks about Christopher Columbus. We can't have Christopher Columbus statue. Was that in Tower Grove Park down in South City? Wasn't that?
Yeah, and they removed it, I guess, one morning under the cloak of daybreak because they didn't want to draw attention to it or something like that.
Right. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, at this point, I say the German people are enlightened. We're a bunch of cretins because of the fact that once again, what's the saying? Those who fail to learn from history are bound to repeat it.
That's right.
The idea being is that instead of taking down the Civil War memorials, we should be taking people to those Civil War memorials and say, look, this man was wrong because he felt that the United States should be a country that embraces slavery, and we fought a war over this, and the North won, and we got rid of slavery, and the South lost, and they lost slavery. So that's why this man's got a statue right here. We should learn from this guy because he was wrong. But
but Brad, the differences in culture, and that maybe folks in Germany or other parts of the world aren't conditioned to be perpetually offended by a symbol. So that there are young people in St. Louis who have been raised to, if you see the stars and bars, to immediately get your hackles up and claim that you've been injured in some respect. Even if it was part of a Civil War memorial that shows how wrong the South was, you still have a right to be offended because you saw that statue.
And even if you bought an old model of the General Lee of Dukes of Hazzard and it had the stars and bars on the roof, we can't have that. The new version of that car does not have the stars and bars on it. You know what I'm talking about?
So, yeah, I do. And I don't think, Brad, there's any unwinding of the notion that these symbols, like, nobody is going to go back and say, you know what, maybe we should put Thomas Jefferson back up. Maybe we should put Christopher Columbus back up.
I just see what I found was interesting because he is a very left-wing kind of guy, but yet he was saying things that made perfect sense. And essentially what he was saying, hey, all you lefties out there who are tearing down all these monuments and memorials and statues, you're wrong. And I'm thinking to myself, thought it was interesting. Anyway, we have to take a break. We still got to talk about the stove stuff, okay?
Yes.
God, you got some good stuff this morning. It's 7:42.